With that, I now recognize my very good friend, the ranking member of the full committee, Ms. DeLauro, for her opening remarks on the bill.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and I want to thank Chairman Womack and Ranking Member Clyburn. You know, this is an extraordinary committee, which I think everyone here is very proud to serve on, and I've had the privilege of serving on the Appropriations Committee probably for the last 25 years. And I've had the opportunity to work with both sides of the aisle in producing legislation that will help to make a difference in the lives of the American people, which is the goal of what this institution is all about. And I treasure the friendships on both sides of the aisle, that we can come together and produce legislation that does make that difference in people's lives, gives them an opportunity for the success they deserve because how hardworking they are. So I thank you for being here this morning. I thank the staff for the great work, staff on both sides of the aisle that make a difference. As I always say, they keep our names on the door. And I particularly want to say a thank you to Christina Monroe, Jackie Kilroy, and Nora Fay. And with my opening comments, which makes me very, really sad to have to stand up and to oppose this bill, a bill that will make affordable housing and quality transportation options more expensive and out of reach for more Americans. We are in the middle of a cost of living crisis, and housing and transportation are two of the largest expenses for American households. The burden of everyday necessities, rent, mortgage rates, housing prices, home insurance, car insurance has skyrocketed. Americans are desperate for help with housing and transportation costs. But President Trump is not laser focused on the cost of living, which he is actually making worse. And with this bill, I have to conclude that nor are House Republicans. Their big, ugly bill is handing massive tax breaks to billionaires and the biggest corporations while driving up the costs for middle-class families to buy a home and abandoning neighborhoods devastated by natural disasters and struggling with historic disinvestment. And today we are considering another House Republican bill which will raise costs for struggling American families, make it harder for them to get by. Never mind that we have no complete budget. We are holding this markup in a completely unprecedented time, as a Congress's authority is being challenged by a lawless administration. Since taking office, President Trump's administration has stolen resources appropriated by the Congress, Democrats and Republicans, for programs and services across the federal government, including several in this bill that help to grow the middle class, protect workers, and support Americans' businesses. We cannot continue as the Appropriations Committee to abdicate the power that we have prescribed by the Constitution, abdicate that power of the purse to the executive. We're looking at grants for nonprofits to fight the scourge of housing discrimination terminated, meaning that many Americans, including people with disabilities, will go without safe and sufficient housing. As seniors and families face increased energy costs, this administration is freezing a program that helps make their housing more energy efficient and resilient from natural disasters. Taxpayer-funded investments to repair our roads, our bridges, transit systems, and ports that create jobs, boost local economies, have been stolen, creating costly delays and risking jobs. All of these programs Congress enacted and appropriated funding for in law. It's the law of the land. They are substituting Congress's decisions and judgments with their own. These cuts affect all of our constituents. Recently, NeighborWorks New Horizons was able to assist one of their residents in fulfilling her dream of purchasing her own home. Jan, a longtime employee of Yale New Haven Hospital, was a NeighborWorks tenant for over 10 years. And when she expressed that she wanted her piece of the American dream, NeighborWorks provided her with counseling services like budget coaching and homebuyer education. When she discovered that NeighborWorks was building a house down the street from her apartment, she asked if she was qualified to buy it. NeighborWorks helped her navigate the process, connected her to another organization that offered her down payment and closing cost assistance. NeighborWorks makes the American dream possible for people who otherwise may not have reached it. And later in this markup, I will offer an amendment to restore funding for the home program, legal assistance grants, housing counseling, and for NeighborWorks. But the Trump administration's stealing and the bill before us today puts the American dream further out of reach for the working class and the middle class. It makes it more difficult for those struggling to keep a roof over their head to secure and remain in affordable housing. It fails to prevent several 100,000 evictions across the country by shorting rent payments for public housing by $1.5 billion and the Section 8 voucher program by $3 billion. This bill falls short of providing vulnerable seniors and people with disabilities the safety net they need to stay secure in their homes. Nearly 750,000 Americans experience homelessness. But this bill shortchanges homeless assistance grants, which would mean nearly 28,000 fewer people who are currently living on the street will receive the help they need to secure housing. While housing costs are escalating faster than Americans can keep up, so too are the costs of transportation. New cars, used cars, insurance, all making transportation unaffordable. So what does the majority's bill do to help? Gut investments in our transit networks that relieve Americans of high transportation costs. The majority is zeroing out investments for Amtrak, forcing the railroad to dig into the couch cushions in hopes of finding what they need to pay their workers, maintain service, and keep their train system safe. This bill delays rail infrastructure improvements already underway from New York to Norman, Oklahoma. This bill's evisceration of commuter transportation halts improvements for rail and bus transit everywhere, from Miami to Salt Lake City to Columbus to San Antonio and, yes, to New Haven, Connecticut. Connecticut Department of Transportation Commissioner Garrett Eucalito reached out after reviewing the majority's bill, alarmed by the cuts and transfers of funds from the bipartisan infrastructure law. He said, and I quote, "With over $10 billion in capital needs on the New Haven line, which the state of Connecticut inherited from a bankrupt private railroad that failed to invest for decades, we cannot make these repairs on our own." The THUD majority proposal will not only stop progress on improving the Northeast Corridor, but will set us back on our heels just as we have started to see momentum, end quote. Americans cannot keep up with the cost of housing and transportation. This committee has the power to do something about it, and we should. Unfortunately, this bill, the majority has instead pursued draconian funding levels and a pro-eviction, pro-road congestion agenda that will only make household budgets tighter. Cannot support this bill, and I yield back. Thank you.